So you mentioned the GDP growth. So what do you think, what will the economic growth look like in the future?
A lot of people, when they look at the report basically and they say, oh, China is growing at a certain rate, 6%, 7%, right? And they worry because since the reform and opening up, right, China was growing at double digits. And this seems like, oh no, the economy is not doing well. What people don't realize is that China has shifted in the kind of GDP that is producing. When they were manufacturing all these cheap things here in China, labor was propelling all that GDP. But today, they're producing completely different things. It's high tech, is telecommunications, is AI, is video cameras. Think of a company like DJI and their drones, and the breakthroughs in technology are taking place here in China. So that GDP that used to be cheap labor has been replaced by a very different knowledge-based and knowledge-oriented GDP that is much more stable, that is much more sustainable, and that actually is beneficial not only for China but for the world at large. I see, for example, the fact that China has its own space station and that is going to collaborate and cooperate with other countries around the world. All the technology, all the research that can be done in space, that is going to translate into new technologies, new materials, new ways of doing things. So China's economy might have slowed down in terms of GDP growth, but it's just a completely GDP if you compare it to 20, 30 years ago. It has nothing to do, it's very different. So there is so much room for improving the quality of this GDP. It's not just the amount, but the quality of the GDP and the resilience to changes in the world and changes in the markets. That's what makes this quite exciting and interesting for China. They are in a position to see their GDP continue to grow at a rate that is much more sustainable for the future. And that's what a lot of people would be interesting for them to understand. China is producing very different things nowadays, and well, that's good for the world as well.
All right, thank you so much, Fernando. That's all the questions that I have. Do you have anything that you want to add?
I think that the report, anything that came out on the report and everything that is being discussed in terms of China and the future needs to be seen within the frame of COVID. The pandemic has affected how China does things, what China can do, and to what extent things can be done. So the expectations also need to be reeled in a little bit, considering what the pandemic has done to the economies of the world, not only China. And the most important thing that I would like to say is we in China have the opportunity to continue to work and develop ourselves and find other ways to get better and improve and create more growth for the country, because we are kept alive, because the country takes care of COVID in the way that keeps us healthy. So even though that's always affecting everything and anything in China, the basic information is we are kept safe. Nothing else matters.
Yeah, because the country cares about its people. What do you think of the dynamic zero policy here?
My perspective is this is something that has shown to be effective. There's many things to be said about this. The first one would be how it has changed. We started in 2020 with a massive lockdown, but what we're seeing now in 2022 is localized lockdowns, localized corrections to situations that spark here and there. I don't think China is going to abandon its zero COVID, dynamic zero COVID approach, because it works and it keeps people safe. And it's putting health before wealth. That's something that has been the principle since the beginning, and if you were to abandon it today, you would be throwing in the garbage all the efforts that you've made in the past, all the sacrifices that you've made in the past. So in my mind, there is absolutely no chance for China to change this. It works, it is safe, and again, it's an example for the world. When people question it, what they're trying to do is they try to cover the failures that their own governments have in terms of their management of COVID. No country can come to China and discuss their efficiency and their efficacy in terms of controlling the pandemic. No country has the numbers and the, the figures to challenge and to criticize what China does. No country. So that's my take. We're going to continue doing it. We're going to continue to be safe. And hopefully at one point, the world is going to realize that the path that China chose is the correct path, and they're going to meet us on this side of history, the side of history that protects lives over capital.
All right, thank you so much, Fernando. Thank you.